Welcome back to the Getting a Grip podcast. It's a changing of the seasons in different parts of the world, coming into autumn over here in Australia, coming into summer over where Merlin is in Europe. And as we kind of change the seasons, we are changing the surfaces as well. So we've had our kind of the beginning portion of the year is our sort of like big hard court swing. Obviously the Aussie Open headlining it, and then we've had, a few Masters events. What are you doing? Are you like swatting away a fly or something?
No, you said big hard court swing, and I was like, that's a good pun. Swing.
Okay, yeah, I missed
Anyway, you carry on. Carry on.
And now, yes, we are transitioning away into the clay court season, leading up ultimately to the French Open. So we've had a couple of tournaments last week in different parts of Europe, like Portugal, Morocco, I think was one of them, or something like that. And then we've got obviously the Monte Carlo Masters, like kicking us off with Masters events, and then we've got Rome and Madrid to come. So yeah, lots to get our teeth stuck into. So on that theme, these questions are going to be based on clay or based on the difference between surfaces. What do we think?
We're discussing surfaces today. Let's put it that way. And every time we get that different change in the season, we get a different shift in the style of play, and we're also going to get a different a different sort of thread of players that start to become the stars for that portion of the season as well, because obviously we know that some players prefer certain surfaces. Anyway, we've got 5 questions. Yes, they are all related to the surfaces, but I have tailored them a little more towards the clay, so we're going to talk about the differences, but more in terms of what it means for clay, and we can see what everyone thinks, and also I'm interested to know what everyone prefers. So we'll have a little poll in the social medias, as it were, about what people prefer, and a lot of Europe arguably is starting to prefer a certain clay surface, but that doesn't necessarily appeal to everyone. Anyway, shall we start with question 1? Should we put you in the hot seat, Ben? Shall we see if you can get more than... What's your record so far? Is it 3?
No, I think 4 is my best. I still don't think I've got 5. Yeah.
Oh, you just haven't gotten the full... You haven't gotten the full 5. Okay, well, we'll see what we can do here. Let's see how well it starts, first of all. Anyway, so question number 1. What I want to know, nice and easy, how many commercial court surfaces are there? So I want to know how many types of commercial court surface there are. And your options are 3, 8, 11, or 15. What do we reckon?
Jesus.
How many different types of commercial court surface types are there?
No, it can't be 3 because that just seems way too low. I can already think of like acrylic, the normal kind of like tarmac-y stuff that we used in England, clay, grass, synthetic. Ooh, if I can think of that many just off the top of my head, then maybe 8's even possibly too low. This is quite tricky, actually. This is not boding well for the rest of the questions. This is probably supposed to be the easy one. What else would there be? I'm being stupid here.
It's probably difficult because, you probably could come up with a range of possible surfaces. There's probably a court in the world that falls outside of one of the number that you're about to say, and there's probably a surface where someone's like, yeah, let's try it on pillows, shall we? Let's see what tennis is like on pillows. Yeah, that'd be nice.
On sponge.
Water tennis? Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, let's just line it with about a thin line of water. Yeah, that'd make it real slidey.
Slip and slide tennis.
Yeah. Eskimo tennis? Ice tennis? Oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that now, actually. Apologies if that's offensive to anyone.
Let's go with... I might just go down the middle. I'll go with 11.
You are correct. Well done. Yes, It is indeed 11. So Again, this is a little bit a little bit sort of subjective. It's not necessarily an exact answer because you could pretty much think of anything and play tennis on it in terms of a court surface type. But yes, in terms of what a company might sell you commercially, there are 11 court surfaces, and that includes, and yes, I'm going to give you the list now: acrylic, asphalt, concrete, which we call hard courts, artificial clay, and then actual clay. Then there's also hybrid clay. And then we also have, and when I say hybrid clay, that's sort of a mix between, sometimes they have actually done they did an exhibition event between the world number 1 and 2. I can't remember when, it was in the noughties, where they put half grass and half clay.
Oh, yeah.
Which was weird.
That was Nadal and Federer, I'm sure it was. I think I remember seeing the videos of that.
I think you're right. Well, yeah, because they were the kings of the respective courts at the time, weren't they? Yeah. And then you've also got artificial grass, and then grass, then carpet. And then the ones that I found interesting is there are companies out there in the world who will do your court in wood or tile. Like, why would you play on wood or tile? Like wood, that would not last very long. You dent that, chip that, or whatever quite quickly. Well, I suppose you'd varnish it or something.
Coat of varnish, like yeah. But that'll be just very, very slidey. May as well just buy new socks at that point. Tiling's a weird one. It's like you're like moving your bathroom out onto the court, like tiling the court. I want to see who's actually got a court like that. That would be quite interesting. It'd also be like,
yeah, I think it would get progressively dangerous on that baseline the more you sweat as well, surely.
And you could go for all sorts of different patterns with that as well. Like, you can really throw people off.
That's true. Yeah, that could be nice actually. Just lots of little tennis balls on the ground.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
That would really mess me up.
It's hard enough playing with like floodlights on, let alone like trying to see the ball out of tennis balls. Oh my god, that'd be quite interesting. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, as I was saying, so there are 11 types of commercial court type, but on the Pro Tour for both the ATP and the WTA, there are only 3, and that's why that was one of the options. So we have clay, we have hard, and we have grass, which we call the faster surface. So that moves us on to the next question. So grass courts are notorious for being faster to play on, which obviously suited the likes of Mr. Federer, your favourite, and led to him excelling for quite a long period of time. But what I want to know, and this is an interesting statistic, is how many points on average is a match on a grass court compared to a hard surface or a clay. So how many points on average more do players play? That's just a tough way to say this.
You've got yourself in a right angle
on grass compared to hard or clay. I think I read a sentence and then missed the next part of the sentence. Right, hang on. We'll try this again.
The average difference in the number of shots.
What is the... Yes, okay, there you go. No. Points. What is the average number of points more played on grass compared to hard or clay in a match? And your options are...
Okay, all right.
Your options are... This will help. On a grass court, are there 20 points played more than would be on a hard or a clay match? Are there 30 points played more than on a hard or a clay court match? 40 or 50?
20, 30, 40 or 50?
Yeah.
Average per match.
Average amount of points played more on grass surface than on any other surface. And this is for men and women. I'll have you know.
That's almost counterintuitive. Like, at least initially I was like, surely they're going to be less points on the grass. But then I suppose it's easier to hold serve and you get to tie breaks more often. So, it'd also be interesting to compare the number of shots though, because I reckon even if there's like a fair few more points on grass, the shots in total would be longer on the other surfaces. There you go, tennis.
Yeah.
Well,
the fact that they're faster, that's why I didn't ask the question, how many more shots in a rally are the other surfaces compared to grass, because we know grass points are shorter than any other surface.
Interesting. I mean, okay, I guess I could maybe science it if I just took like the average set and thought, well, it's probably like the average score line is probably like 6-4 or something like that in a grass court, whereas it's probably like 6-3 or 2, maybe. I don't know. On another surface. Oh, this is difficult. More points. I'm I'm leaning towards the lower end. Jeez, can't even speak. I'll go with 20. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. You need to get a grip, because unfortunately it was not 20, it was 30. So on average, on the male and female tours, there are 30 more points played in a match on grass courts than there are on either hard or clay surface. So yeah, that's one of those things that is a little bit odd. You do think that maybe on a grass court that you would have quicker matches and therefore there would be fewer points. But in reality, the nature of holding serve, as you say, rightly so, actually leads to more points, because people are able to lay down a few more aces in a game, make returns a lot harder, and basically statistics like that. So, yeah.
So if, let's say, like the average number of points in a game is like, I don't know, if it's 40-15, you're probably getting 5 or 6 points in a game, right? So over a match, you're saying 30 points. So that's like an extra 5 games, 6 games over the course of a match. If it's like best of
Pretty
3,
much.
then that's like an extra 5 games. Yeah, I suppose. Like 2 games.
There are a few matches on the grass where it's like 6-1, 6-love, or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that's like a couple of games difference per set, actually. Interesting. Yeah, there you go. Didn't know that. I suppose some people would argue that, like, I don't know, maybe we'll come on to this later, but that it's almost more boring on grass because there's less rallying, and it's like, if you've got someone who's good at serving, it's like, well, it's pretty much like if they have a good serving day, then you're almost guaranteed to go to a tiebreak. Whereas at least on the other surfaces, like, you got a chance of getting those returns in because it's a little bit slower off the surface and stuff like that. But I think that all kind of feeds into like people's preferred game style as well. Like, I like things being quicker, so I'm like, I quite like watching the grass because I know that even though there's more points, like the match is going to be done quicker probably, and there's, I don't know, it's just a bit more dynamic. But then there's other things to appreciate in longer rallies, I suppose, like in terms of strategy and tactics and stuff. Anyway, I digress.
Well, you say about servers dominating on the grass, for example. If we chuck ourselves back to that Wimbledon semi-final with Kevin Anderson and John Isner, and you start to think about, okay, well, if you have 2 servers going up against each other on the grass, will that match ever end? Well, yeah, you've got to change the rules. We had to change the rules to effectively address that issue on the grass court surfaces. So you can see where the issues do start to develop, whereas you can see that the issues on clay court surfaces is you might actually have matches that go on too long in another sense, because
what if they're both really good returners?
Exactly.
The opposite, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's tough. Like, we're never going to quite address that question of, tennis is so long, what are we going to do about it? We have to accept that that's what our sport is, I think. But when we get to a grassroots level, we do have to think about how to encourage more people into the sport without thinking about that time aspect. So yes, in one sense, we're like, okay, the matches can't go on too long. Yes, you have more of a definitive cutoff point in the Pro Tour, but when it comes to the grassroots level, we need more of a time-based method of playing the game, which is where I'm a fan of, sort of, you play an hour, whoever racks up the most games. That's a great way to play tennis, but still.
Yeah, I think that's what the UTS event's trying to do. Is like, just look at different ways of doing it. That's something we can talk about like down the line as well when it starts to happen. So maybe we just play everything on hard court. Happy medium.
Happy
But
medium.
boring
Yeah,
because there's
exactly.
there's no variety then, I suppose.
No. We love our surfaces and we love the difference. It's a great part of our sport, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so 1 out of 2 so far. It's not too bad, 50%. We'll come on to question number 3 now. So obviously we've just talked about grass courts. On the opposite side of the spectrum, obviously clay courts are notoriously slower. What I want to know, and this is probably my favorite question out of the 5 today, is on average, how much speed is lost from a ball upon impact with a clay surface? So in percentage terms, given the speed of the ball hitting the surface, hitting the clay, is say that full 100%. What I want to know is how much of that speed is lost when it impacts the surface before it bounces up for the player to hit back. And your 4 options are 20%, 30%, 40%, or 50%. How much speed from the ball is lost upon impact with the clay surface?
Is it 20, 30, 40, or 50 again?
That you will have a good way of working the answer out. 20, 30, 40, and 50, yep.
What do you mean I'm going to have a good way of working out?
So none of the answers here are silly. I'll give you a little help there. None of the answers here are silly. All of the answers
extreme to me.
All of the answers are within the range for all of the court types. Commercial court types, obviously.
What about the tiled surface? I want to know. It actually speeds up by 50%. Oh,
imagine. Oh God, we'd be harnessing that for perpetual energy. Anyway,
tell you what, it feels like that when you play on like the artificial grass. You remember like when we played those guys with the slice? I'm just like, oh my God, this is like, it's like getting lower and it's getting faster, and I hate it. Okay, it's in the range for all of them. Interesting. Okay, well maybe I'll lean towards the higher end then. 50 still seems quite high. Like that means if you're set, like, I don't know, let's say you hit a ground stroke at like 100 miles an hour, you're losing 50% of that speed. So by the time the person's about to return that shot, it's 50 miles an hour. Or where is it? No, sorry. When as it just comes off the surface, is that what you mean? And it's going to get really complicated.
Yeah, so it's as it bounces off the surface. Yeah, again, let's not overthink this question.
I'm thinking about cricket now because I remember watching like replays of they show like how fast it comes out of someone's hand, and again, surfaces in cricket are different. And if it's a slower pitch, they're showing you the speed off the surface compared to quicker pitches. But I'm trying to think of
so this is that same question.
None of this is helping me. This is just like burning more time.
Perhaps it's helping our listeners.
Yeah, no, probably not. I'll go with 40%, just because I don't know, in my head 50 seems high, but it's probably one of those two. 40%.
40%. Final answer?
Yeah.
You are correct. Well done.
Hey.
Yes, it is indeed exactly 40% on average that a ball will slow down by. That is how much speed is lost from the ball on impact with a clay surface. So, yeah, imagine that. You've got 100-mile-an-hour serve and you're returning a 60-mile-an-hour ball. I think that's kind of cool because it certainly highlights the difference that you'll get on a clay. For sort of the comparison aspect of this, do you want to just hazard a guess at the grass court statistic for the same?
Well, you sort of gave me the answer, didn't you? Is it 20%?
Yeah, it is. It is 20%. Yeah, so on a grass court, only 20% will be lost off of the ball. So, that does make a massive difference, especially to the returner of a serve. You can see how that leads to more of a returner dominant game on clay courts, which is always when I go immediately to, why has Murray never been too successful on a clay court? Anyway.
But then there's all those other aspects. in terms of the
Yes, I
actual
know,
rallies.
but still.
I wonder what. Yeah, I'd be interested to know how the spin affects that. Because obviously Nadal, played with like a lot more topspin than all the other players, and obviously it gives him more height off the surface. But I also wonder how much speed. Maybe he loses less speed off the surface as well from his shots because of that. So that's like another interesting thing. No, there you go. 40%. That is still a lot.
Okay, interesting. So now we're going to move on to question 4, which is still a little bit about clay court dynamics and dynamics of the ball. And as you'll know from my sort of coaching methodology, I prefer to teach people about how to read the ball, what the ball's going to do, what you want the ball to do, rather than think too much about that sort of internal characteristics of how we hit the ball. Love what my voice did there when I said how, by the way.
Meow. Formula One voice.
Anyway, we'll stay on point with the question. So, question 4. If a standard tour level ball, and there are like ways of defining that, but a standard tour level ball is dropped from 1.8 meters high, it will bounce to 1 meters high on a grass court. Okay? You got that?
Mm-hmm.
How high will it bounce on a clay court? And your options are 0.8 meters, 1 meter, 1.3 meters, or 1.5 meters.
Oh, well, it has to be higher. Surely. Otherwise, everything I've been told about tennis is wrong. I've been lied to all this time. Yeah, like grass is traditionally the ball bounces lower on grass, and then a little bit higher on hard court, and then a little bit higher on clay court. So you said 1 meter for grass. So, 1.5 meters. That's almost the same height as the original drop, that's crazy. Gravity won't allow that. I say gravity will not allow that.
Okay.
I don't like the way you smiled there, as if like I'm setting myself up for embarrassment. But I'll just go straight for it. I'll go with 1.3 meters.
Okay. Well, you're correct. Well done. Yeah, absolutely right. If a ball is dropped onto a clay court from the height of 1.8 meters, it will bounce up to a height of 1.3 meters. So, we're talking grass court. So we've talked about the speed of the ball, right? There's a difference of 20% speed lost between a grass court and a clay court on that ball. So we're also talking about the fact now that the ball will bounce 30 centimeters higher on a clay court after the bounce, because sort of 1.8 meters. Okay, yeah, most balls aren't hit from necessarily that high. Definitely higher on the serve, for example. So they will bounce up a lot higher. And this is also a dropped ball as well, not a hit ball. Down into a surface that we're talking about. But if that difference of 30 centimeters comes everywhere onto the court, you're talking about sort of this difference being a sort of just below chest height ball now becoming a top of my head height ball, which completely changes the dynamic of how you want to hit a tennis ball, for example. And this is why, for example, full Western grips really suit clay courts, because basically you can get that same racket angle, but with a higher contact point in order to hit through that shot, hit that topspin. But also it changes where you need to stand as well, especially on the return. So we talk about clay being great for baseline players. Well, it's hard to get to the net because you're so much further back. And I know it doesn't feel like you're so much further back. It's a step or two, but that step or two makes all the difference when someone's looking for a passing shot as you're approaching the net as well. So, there's all of these things to think about. You'd be interested to know as well that the court at Philippe Chatrier is the longest court available on the tour. Because basically they have to give you more room at the back to roam based on the way that the surface plays, which is why Rafael Nadal has arguably been so successful there, because he's able to stand so much further back, which is why I love a drop serve now.
Which is why we needed to see Kyrgios play Nadal on Chatrier, because that would have been interesting.
Yes. I would pay so much to see that.
Or Alcaraz with his drop shots as well. That would be funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, what we're talking about is although you lose speed on clay versus grass courts with your shot, more of it's being transferred into the actual. So more of it's gripping basically, and it's being transferred into the height off the surface rather than the speed. So yeah, you're kind of the speed that you lose is almost being just transferred into the bounce of the ball. So that just makes it interesting, doesn't it? And that's what gave Federer so much trouble when he played Nadal on clay, because he'd be trying to hit a single hander up here, and you just control. So yeah, all these different dynamics play out. Which again, this is why we like the variety of the surfaces, because it shows you different aspects of the same players' games, and even the same matchups can play out completely differently depending on which surface they're playing on.
Yeah.
All right.
Interesting. So, got 3 out of 4. Could be on for a good day today.
That is a good day already.
Final question. That's a good day already. All right. Okay. Set the bar high, why don't you? Anyway, question number 5. So we've talked a lot about, sort of what the ball does on a clay court. So now let's see how that impacts. How that impacts the game specifically. So for this last question, what I want to know is, on average in 2019, amongst the ATP top 50. So this doesn't include the WTA because I couldn't find that data. I want to know how many points did the returner win on clay? So on average in 2019, amongst the ATP top 50, how many points on average did the returner win on the clay court surface throughout a match? So that's both players throughout a match. How many points were won by the returner? And your options are 20%, 30%, 35%, or 40%.
20, 30, 35, 40. The only real stats I know on return points won are like the top players, because that's the stat that always comes up. Like these guys win like nearly 50% of their return points compared to an average of, I don't know, whatever it is, probably around 30 or something. Well, I'm not going to go with the lower end because that seems too low. Like I said, I feel like 30 is around the average just across the tour level and across the surfaces. So I feel like this might be a little bit higher than that. So I'm going to lean towards the higher end of 35 or 40. Ooh. 40 is like, it's that 2 out of every 5 points. So that's basically, you're winning like 2 points in someone else's service game. I'm just going to go for it. I'll go with the higher one. I'll go with 40%, but could be too high.
Well, as sure as the sun is shining on both of our ends of this call, you are correct. It is indeed 40%. That is how many points on average amongst the ATP top 50 in 2019, this is as well, for context, are won by the returner on a clay court surface. And I think that's astounding. I think that's quite high. That's really high, because you're thinking about it again, like, so the clay court is slower, higher bouncing. Therefore, the returner basically can sink their teeth into a serve a little bit more often than on any other surface. And I do have the stats for the other surfaces. Do you want to know those as well?
Go on then.
So comparatively, the statistic is 37% on hard courts and 35% on grass. Amongst the ATP top 50, this is including people like Novak Djokovic and Andy Murray at the time, who, well, I suppose Andy Murray at that time, not necessarily, but basically people who have been lauded as the best returners in our game ever. So it's not only a craft that clay courts lend themselves to, but it's also something that has been gradually getting better and better. as our sport progresses through its evolution, effectively. And it's interesting because, we're not talking about necessarily them making returns. This isn't a statistic on how many points have they made the return. It's how many points have they won off the return. So, there are arguably more instances in a clay court match as well where they're making that return back but not winning the point. So it is about, as well, on a clay court surface, they have more opportunity to sink themselves into a rally off of someone's serve, rather than being completely dominated by someone's serve, as you may see more on the grass, which is nice because it allows our consistent baseliners to shine if they're going to get into more of the service points.
Yeah, I don't know what we don't know what the data is for like the average return position, like how far back they are, but like they get a bit more time, and they're able to take almost like more like a normal swing, even off, well, I don't know, maybe more off a first serve as well. Obviously second serve, normally you're able to take like a normal swing, which then enables them to get the ball back deeper, I guess, and like almost trying to reset the rally more effectively than, if you're on grass and you're probably going to have to stand up a little bit for the first serve and just kind of block the ball back, and then you haven't got quite that same control over how, like, the depth of the ball, so the other player is able to maybe hit their +1 shot and almost finish the point from there, or the next shot after that. So yeah, you're right, it just gives them time to sink into the game, and just they get a bit more rhythm off the return as well. So yeah, and then you get these like long ass rallies, like 45 or whatever it was. You said, like Murray against Dimonor. Oh jeez.
yeah, that was a good point in an otherwise kind of poor match, but yeah, that's a topic for another conversation. I'd rather forget that this happened. Yeah, and I think this is interesting. Like what we've talked about today, I encourage people who, obviously everyone listening to this podcast probably loves their tennis, is you should probably try and look out for these sorts of characteristics in the matches you're about to see in the upcoming weeks, because you're going to see some longer points. Oh, okay, cool. Well, that's why. Having this understanding, or at least for me, helps me enjoy watching these things even more. Maybe for some people that's not the case, but you've been informed, so do with it what you will.
Yeah, have a look at the data and stuff they give you like during the matches. On like, well, they'll give you stuff on like, they might give you the odd random stat on like, I don't know, the spin rate, or they'll show you like where they're standing. Maybe they'll compare it to another player, or they'll compare it to where they returned on another surface, stuff like that. And then they'll show you like set by set, at the end of each set, they'll show you like how many return points they won, and I don't know, average rally length, and even like, I don't know what the difference would be between like winners and unforced errors as well, like across the surfaces, whether there's, I don't know, would there'd be less unforced errors on clay compared to grass, where it's harder to time the ball, but then there might be less winners as well, perhaps, because it's hard to hit through someone. Yeah, stuff like that. There's all these kind of different things that you can look at. Just keep an eye out on that for the data and stuff that they give you during the matches, because it just, I don't know, it gives you like a storyline, right, to follow through a match. Yeah, and the players like making adjustments and stuff. But yeah, there we go. 4 out of 5. I'll take that. I mean, I did sort of guess like most of them, but educate.
How do you think I do well every week?
I know. I'm just not very good at an educated guess, trying to logic it. But you kind of helped me out a little bit, so I'll take that. I don't know. Is there anything we want to add about the tournaments that are going on, or I don't know? Clay courts as like a surface is obviously more common in Europe. Like we've talked about this before, right? So a lot of the tournaments coming up are going to be more clay based, and they'll probably be a bit more European based, because that's a surface that kind of deals with like different weather conditions better. And it's cheaper to maintain as well, isn't it?
Yeah, they're more expensive to lay, sort of about 10-20% more expensive than, say, a hard or a grass court, but they are much cheaper to maintain in the long run, whereas a grass court, for example, it's relatively cheaper to lay, but really expensive to maintain. So yeah, it depends It depends what you're going for, especially if you're a club as well. You've got to work out which surface suits your membership as well. And for example, if you're in a grassroots place and you want a surface that suits people sort of at the older end of the age spectrum, for example, then clay is great because it's much better for impact on joints and stuff like that and wear and tear on the body. Whereas if you want to, sort of damage your knees quite a lot, then go for a hard court. Why not? It will wear your body than it will your shoes. But yeah, it like I say, all of these things have their perks and their drawbacks.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I moved from a club where it was like an older membership base, and we had the synthetic with the sand, and so it was like a lot easier to slide and stuff. And then I moved to like a club that's more geared towards juniors, and it's back on hard courts. And I was like, even just my movements and stuff, I can feel it like in my knees a little bit compared to before, and like trying to adjust to like how much grip I get when I'm trying to like push off and stuff. I was almost like tripping over myself initially. I was like, oh my God, I've got like too much grip now. I can't like move off quick enough. So yeah, these things, are interesting. We will put out like a poll to gauge people's preference on what kind of surface they prefer. Maybe what you prefer to play on might be different from what you prefer to watch, or it might be the same.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. And yeah, give us a follow on the different podcast platforms wherever you listen, and on YouTube, like it, share it around, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.